Oh hi, I didn't see you there. Hi team, and welcome to this week's weekly book chat. This week we are reviewing Children of Dune, the third book in the Dune series. There are 6 books in this series, and then there's a bunch of prequels, sequels, side stories, etc. So this is the third book. As you know, I slammed the second book, so let's dive in and see how this one is. So, as usual, we have to put in a disclaimer that there are significant spoilers. If you are invested in the Dune series, either in the books or the films, please turn off if you don't want to know what happens. It's a few more years on, things have really moved on again. Alaya, Paul's sister, is now regent. She is ruling Arrakis and the Empire, i.e. the universe, in place of Paul and Shani's twins until they come of age. I believe they're about 10 or something like that. They are called Ganima and Leto after Paul's dad, Leto Atreides. Alaya is kind of corrupt. Again, we've kind of strayed so far from God's plan. Paul's plan for, a paradise on Arrakis and universe being at peace has not happened. Alaya is essentially corrupt. She's using the channel of the religion that sprung up around Paul, or Muad'Dib as he's known, to really just push her own agenda. So the church has become a corrupt institution, the state has become a corrupt institution, and it's really a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship anyway, but under Paul it was a kind of benevolent dictatorship. Over Alaya, it's not good. Alaya is now married to Duncan Idaho. If you remember, Duncan Idaho died in the first book or film, but he was revived and now he's a good guy again. Alaya has prescient vision. It was the same thing Paul had, where they can see into the future. Paul felt trapped by it, and that because he's seen the future, he felt like it was almost unavoidable. He didn't really see any difference between the future and the present, so once he had seen the future, it felt like it had already come to pass, and he felt trapped by what he had seen. Alaya has kind of gone down the same path. She's consuming a lot of the spice, obviously the substance on Arrakis that the whole plot centres on. And this has given her vision, but there's a condition called abomination, and the Bene Gesserit were very concerned about this in Paul and his sister and his twins. Especially the sister and the twins, because they became kind of aware in the womb and they got all the Bene Gesserit knowledge. The way the Bene Gesserit have their power, or one of the things their power is based on, is that when they go through their process to make them what they are, get all the memories and all the knowledge from all their ancestors and all the people that have came before them. Paul's sister Alaya and Paul's twins had that in the womb, so they were kind of born already with thousands of years of knowledge and history. They're not really children. Alaya's an adult now anyway, but the kids are still kids, but they're not really kids, they're just adults in a kid's body. And the danger is that the voices in their head, all the kind of people and historical figures and ancestors they hold in their mind, some of them can push for dominance and can almost take over. You can become possessed, especially if it's a bad one that takes over, so that's a risk, and Alaya is kind of flirting with that. The book also starts on, there is a plot to kill the twins. If you remember, Irulan, who is going to be played by Florence Pugh, she was the daughter of the former emperor who Paul overthrew. She was Paul's wife, but in name only, because he never go near her, so she was only really a token wife to legitimise his claim to the throne. His real wife was Shani. She has now flipped. She's devoted herself to taking care of the twins and being on the side of House Atreides. However, she has a relative, it was either a sister or a cousin, I'm unsure, and she has a child, and her child would be next in line to the throne should Alaya and the twins die. So she has cracked a plot with the Sardaukar to have the twins murdered. Essentially, they're going to set some tigers on them in the desert, so they've trained up these tigers that they're controlling by remote control, and they're going to try and orchestrate a scenario where the twins are out in the desert wearing specific clothing that these tigers have been trained to attack, and hopefully bump them off. Interestingly, very interestingly, a preacher has appeared in Arrakis, a man who is blind and came back from the desert, and he is preaching about how Arrakis has lost its way, the Fremen have lost their way, and Alaya is corrupt, and they've strayed so far from Muad'Dib's vision. As you can probably guess, it's Paul. But he looks very old, he's all scarred and stuff like that, like the desert hasn't been kind to him, so people can't quite work out for a while, is it Paul or is it not? But it's Paul. So there's a massive spoiler. Jessica, Paul's mum, is still on Caladan, and she is now with Gurney Halleck, as in they're in a relationship together. She comes back to Arrakis. Arrakis is even more split than it was before. There's a huge divide between the Fremen now. Some of them are really corrupt, some of them are on Alaya's side. I'm sorry, I have a lack of continuity there because I'm not quite sure what it is. I'm going to say Alaya going forward. Them are on Elias' side, they're in it for the power, they are just basically serving the Imperium. Them just want to go back to the desert and live the way they used to. Stilgar, who you'll remember is played by Javier Bardem, serves Elia the same way he served Paul. However, he has a lot of concerns about her. He thinks that she might be possessed. He just wants to go back to the old way of life. He is responsible for the twins as well because they are his great niece and nephew. His brother was their grandfather, being Shani's dad. A lot happens in this book. I have to say, this is really contrasting to the second book. It's a lot more along the lines of the first book, even more so in that there's kind of action really from start to finish in this book. It's not a huge book, but it's a reasonable size. Kind of action in it from the get-go, and I thought, I wonder if they will keep this up, but they did. It sustains all the way through, so action-packed, and it really has you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. A lot happens. It turns out that the Baron, do you remember the Baron Harkonnen? He's played by Stellan Skarsgård. Obviously, anyone who's read the first and second book will know that it unfolds that he is actually Jessica's father, so Paul's grandfather. They're all part of the Bene Gesserit reading programme. He is one of the consciousness in Elia's mind, and he's essentially possessing her and taking her over, making her even more corrupt. She wants to kill the twins, just take power, and eventually turn into him. She's resisting, but she's being gradually broken down by him. And Duncan Idaho can see this. Stilgar can kind of see it. The twins know what's happening, so the twins won't take space and they won't look into the future because they're scared that they will be gripped by what happened to their dad and what is now happening to their aunt. They're resisting it at all costs. Leto has had a vision of something that he must do. It's called the Golden Path, and it's his vision of how he will lead the universe and lead the human race to flourishing, to peace, to prosperity. It all kind of culminates in that the tiger attack does happen, the twins let it happen. They go into the desert, take the risk, they manage to kill the tigers. Leto then puts his sister in a trance so that she thinks, hypnotises her so that she thinks he has been killed in the tiger attack, so that she'll swear revenge on Faradin. He is son of the woman who orchestrated the attack. They need Ganima to believe that Leto is dead, so that if she sees a truth sayer is someone who will make you tell the truth, that she will actually believe it, because they need Leto to pretend that he's dead right now. Arrakis is turning into a paradise in that it is getting a lot of vegetation, it's getting a lot of jungle, it rains and stuff now sometimes. Not on all of the planet, only on some of it. A lot of it's still desert. What they don't realise is that this is killing the worms that create the spice, which is obviously the most valuable substance in the universe, and it's from where House Atreides and the Empire now derives all its power, so can't let that happen. Leto goes into the desert. His grandmother makes him do a trial where she has Gurney Halleck they abduct him with these kind of wild Fremen that live out in the desert, these outcasts, and they basically force feed him the spice so that he has these prescient visions. They need to know if he's an abomination. You know, Jessica, his grandmother, has instructed Gurney that if it looks like he is an abomination, you have to kill him. Gurney obviously doesn't want to do that, but it turns out that he isn't anyway, and he escapes from them because he has a mission of his own. He goes around and starts destroying all the areas that have been cultivated to turn into jungle, to turn into wetland, to get rid of the desert. He kind of evolves. He goes through a procedure where he makes himself not human anymore, but he gives himself superhuman abilities, strength, vision, and also he'll live for a very, very long time. Leto becomes the messiah that everyone thought Paul would be. He literally becomes a kind of god figure, really. He has exceptional powers. He meets his dad in the desert, they reconcile. His dad doesn't agree with what he's doing, he doesn't want this for him, he doesn't want him to become this semi-human god creature, but Leto says, you know, I've committed to the vision that you were scared of. They go back to Arrakis to rescue Ganima, who has been abducted from Stilgar by Elia. Leto gets his sister, he rescues her, and with his grandmother and Stilgar, etc., he goes to confront Elia. He overcomes her forces, and Elia, seeing what she has become, throws herself out the window and commits suicide so that she won't turn into the Baron. It finishes with Leto going to be Emperor of the Universe. He estimates that he will live for 4,000 years. He says to Faradin, you will be my sister's consort because you're part of the same programme as us and you're our cousin, sorry. You will continue breeding our line. However, I'm taking your Sardaukar, and alongside my Fremen will rule the universe for me. I will monitor our family line for the next 4,000 years, and I will make sure it prospers, the universe prospers. You know, I can no longer have kids because of the creature I've become. I'm giving up a lot, but my word is law. I'm supreme dictator of the universe, and that's how it's going to be, and that's how it ends. When I read the blurb for the fourth book, it jumps forward 3,000 years, so the only original character left, or semi-original character left, is Leto. There's some other things that happen in the book that I won't tell you about, just in case you read it. I don't want to spoil it all for you, but this book was exceptional. I absolutely loved it. after slating the second one so enthusiastically, they've really turned it around in this one for me. I'd kind of lost hope. I was actually going to read another book and I was like, I'll give it another chance. You know, the first one was so good. I'm just so invested in the series. I'm going to give it another chance. I am so glad that I did. Absolutely amazing. The plot is so good. It's action packed. I'm so invested. It really has you on the edge of your seat. I can't advocate for it enough. I'll give it 9 out of 10. It is detail heavy. It is detail heavy to the point that it sometimes loses you. The depth of the conversation, the references. Frank Herbert, author of these books, actually researched them for 6 years before he started on the first one, and that really comes across. They are quite technical. It's theology, religion, philosophy. It gets pretty deep sometimes, and I found myself rereading paragraphs multiple times to try and absorb what was going on sometimes. So it does get pretty heavy, and sometimes again it can almost come to the point of being slow. Not for long periods of time, but you get to bits where you're like, kind of lost me there. So for that reason it was 9 out of 10, but you know, that's a kind of double-edged sword because the detail is what makes it good, you know, and the universe creation and the character depth and the underlying themes and the side plots are what make it such a rich and full narrative. So 9 out of 10, can't recommend it enough. I have another book I'm going to read before I go on to the 4th in the series, but I can't wait to read it, and I can't wait to really finish the series, the 6 books, and then probably go off and read the side ones, you know, the prequels and stuff. So again, highly recommend. I've just been gradually going lower and lower in my seat until I'm just a floating head. But yeah, highly recommend. I cannot wait to see how they bring these to life in the movies. You know, the second book and the third book, because the first film actually ends before the first book does, so that's going to have to come to a climactic end in the second book. And then I'm interested to see how far they extend the narrative, because there's so much happens. I'm desperate to talk to somebody about these books. I keep trying to like hint to Ava, and she's like, I don't want to hear it. I like the film. I want to see the next films, but do you know what I mean? I was like, I just need someone to talk to about it, and it's you guys. So this is a very one-sided conversation. But yeah, I highly recommend the book. I will link it in the description as always. Let me know if you read it, let me know what you think, let me know what you think I should review next. And we've come to the end of another one. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Thanks guys.